Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. Late Wednesday afternoon. Today I received some parts so I can assemble the cylinder heads for my 440.ls project. A few weeks ago when I was talking about the cylinder heads and valve springs, specifically I had a set of 0.660 lift springs. Now, LS engines are kind of unique. I've said it before, but the parts manufacturers know the people working on them, for the most part, they want everything in a kit. They're probably not going to measure anything. I don't want to talk bad about LS people, but you have to admit, whether you like them or not, that's majority of people just want to gun the thing together and run it. So everything's a kit. Like valve springs, they got them, up to 600 lift, up to 630, 660, 685, 700, and it comes in a kit. And it's all figured out for you. So if you can manage to get it installed at the right height, pretty much, it's probably gonna run. That is not shared with a lot of other engine families as prevalent as it is in the LS world. So my entire life, since I was old enough to have a few dollars to send away for catalogs, I enjoy searching, reading about parts. I was so hungry for knowledge way back. I remember I can tell you all the Ford engine families and all the displacements, or at least I could. Useless knowledge if you're a Chevy guy, but I just read everything I wanted to know stuff. So shopping for parts, I traditionally do it myself. If I can find the information and a way to buy it, I try to avoid talking to anybody. That includes my local parts stores. If I use them, I have a login and I look it up myself. I also got a buddy that would help me out who works there in a different store, but anyway. He'd be my go-to as well. I don't want to bother him most of the time, but if I have a question about their product line, I'll talk to him first, because it's just easier that way. If you go in, even if you go into the parts store, I know what I want and I probably got the part number. In the long run, it's gonna be a lot easier, and if it's wrong, it's my fault. So the other day, when I was thinking about the fact that now, when I bought the 660 valve spring kit, 0.660 lift, I had all the other LS engine rockers at 1.7, and now I have LS7 and then 1.8. I gained some lift of about 685-ish, 689 on the exhaust. I have these Lenati turbocharged camshafts and lifter kits, and that's what I put in this Ilmor engine. I almost went with the Ilmor camshaft. I have two of them. I have 5 sets of the single beehive valve springs that are all in perfect shape, I'm sure. But I also have these Lenati turbo cam kits, and I put one in it. I made the choice, I put it in, and I'm not taking it back out. Again, you make your choices, you gotta live with it. So, while I have this single beehive Ilmor valve spring in my hand, you can guarantee with the stage that these engines run on and their reputation at stake, this is probably the finest single beehive spring you can buy. I mean, I'm a fool to buy something else when I have these. And the Ilmor camshaft is 630 lift. I looked up all the specs. The exhaust duration's a little bit long, but in some turbocharged applications that could be an advantage. There's no reason why I couldn't run the camshaft, been totally happy, and have a never-ending amount of valve springs that are made for endurance. I want to drive this thing as well as perform. This thing is made to run wide open its whole life, and a single spring, there's no safety cage here, there's no net. A dual spring, in theory, if one breaks, the other might keep the valve from hitting the piston. they are so confident in this single spring that I chose not to use. Can't go back. Well, I could, but I'm not going to. So that's out of the picture. So I was shopping for a 685 spring kit. I don't need to go to 700 because the bigger the spring, the bigger the problem in a nutshell. Now, if I have a friend who has an engine shop now, but he's worked for NASCAR teams. He spent a lot of time running the Spintron, which is a machine, got an electric motor, spins the valve train, and they have sensors all over the valve train, and they can tell you what's going on, and they can do some incredible things. He had one engine turning 10,000 RPMs with like a 150-pound spring. So before the Spintron, you know, it was pretty much, you know, in the caveman days, more lift, more spring. And whatever breaks, breaks. More lift, more spring. Well, that's not always the way to do it. Now they measure harmonics, and you gotta hope that the spring kits you're getting now, maybe some of this technology has been invested in these. You can only hope. So I'm shopping for a 685 spring kit, but as usual, everything I have is a little strange, and this isn't that strange, but these cylinder heads, the DOT 285 LS7 heads, Ilmor specific, they got their own part number right on the box. It says Ilmor, and they spelled Ilmor incorrectly, which is kind of funny. But my bronze valve guides they measure 0.565 of an inch, 565 thousandths. So I'm shopping for valve springs. Where do you go? Who is the most popular LS cam and valve train pot seller? Brian Tooley. I'm on Brian Tooley's website. All their spring kits either say stock LS, which has, I think they're 0.510, the ID, where it goes over the valve guide for your spring locator. The center here on the stock LS is like 0.510. Not gonna fit my 0.565 valve guide. And the locators that are on these Ilmor springs actually measure 0.570. There's a little wiggle room. So I need a dual spring. I'm going to dual spring, so the single spring locator and titanium retainers I already have, I can't use. And I wanted a titanium retainer. I need the proper locator to fit over my valve guide. On the Brian Tooley website, they list their bronze valve guide, that's how they got them listed, valve spring kits, as 0.560. That's not going to fit my valve guide. So I call them up, explain I'm interested in a 0.685 valve spring kit, but it looks like your locators will not fit my guides. He says, nope, ours are 0.560, can't help you. I don't want to bash Brian Tooley or anybody in the company, but that's where my help stopped. It was pretty much click after that. I can't help you. Bang, we're done talking. Okay, not going to buy from Brian Tooley today. I will again. I'll give him a try. Again, I'll find my own part numbers and do it, but I had a tech question. I'm talking to the tech guy. So, do a little more shopping. Cam Motion keeps popping up. They list their 685 spring kit, 570 guide. It says right on the box. You have two choices in their spring kits, stock LS or 0.570 guide. So I'm going to buy their kit. I'm online on their website where shipping is free. But I want valve spring shims because I'd already done a little quick measuring using my Ilmor parts, and I knew my pocket, I'm going to need a shim. I didn't know exactly because when you change the retainer and the locator, that number's going to change, but my pocket is sufficiently deep, made to have a shim under the locator. Hope you're following along here. So I call Cam Motion. I get the tech guy. I tell him I want to buy the spring kit, and I need an assortment of shims to fit my 570 ID or OD guides. I need 570 ID shims. Sufficient diameter to set my valve spring on or the locator. No problem, he says. Gave me an assortment of sizes, and their shims are really cheap. $1 a piece, maybe less. If you've shopped for valve spring shims lately, they're not cheap. So, in conversation, he's taking my credit card information. I say, hey, shipping was free online. Should I just go back? I want to go back online and get free shipping, but I also need the shims. He had to get special permission to sell me the shims. They had to call me back. Calls me back, says everything's taken care of. Give me a credit card number. We're good. This is Wednesday night, last Wednesday night. They'll be there Saturday, FedEx. And then he emails me a receipt. I get the emailed receipt. It says FedEx signature required. This is on a Saturday. So I hung around all day Saturday to sign for a package. FedEx gets here. I don't have to sign. That was not correct. I open the box. I'm all excited. I read the invoice. They charge me $28 shipping. But that's okay. I'm excited. I want to put my heads together. I look at the spring kit. Looks fantastic. Should be good. Until I open the shims. And he sent me stock LS shims. 0.510 ID. Not going to fit my guides. So I couldn't put my heads together. No big deal. I'm not going anywhere, but I was excited. I spent Thursday and Friday night scrubbing and rubbing on my heads, making sure they're completely clean, and which is, a job. They were relatively clean to start with, but they'd been run briefly. And they've been sitting here all week. Today, I got my shims. I bought a 100-pack, a Durabond. These are chrome moly, these black ones right here. And I had measured, and I knew a .060 shim combined with the locator and everything else was going to work. And I've got my first head assembled with the 60,000 shim, and now I'm measuring the second head. Everything's coming out the same. I got to believe with the manufacturing expertise that these heads were built under, every pocket should be the same, but I'm still measuring every one. Now, how to do that? You set the valve in the head, you put your shim, whether you have it or not. If you have it, go ahead. If not, it's going to tell you what you need for a shim. Your locator, you put the measuring tool in there. There's two styles. This is made for a straight spring. This is made for a beehive spring. The LS pretty much always takes the beehive, even though this is a straight spring. This is what's considered a beehive. You can see how it's conical. This one's square. Use whichever one. I have one of each. These are wicked cheap. You can't live without them. And you put it in there, put the valve locks on. You put the retainer on, put the valve locks on. Adjust this down tight to the head and read it. And in this case, they give you the card with the spring, but most all LS's, the installed height of the valve spring is 1 inch, 800 thousandths, 1.800. So valve spring shims, typically, I'm sure there's more available. Most are 15 thousandths, 30 thousandths, 45, 60. And I needed 60, so I bought a 100-pack of 60,000 shims. I also bought some other ones that aren't here yet, but the 60s came first today, and here I am assembling my heads. Again, I'm measuring every pocket. Things are going pretty well. Let me show you my method. But before I do, I forgot I was talking about measuring each pocket. With my new 60,000 shim and all my new hardware, I'm coming out at 1 inch, 796 thousandths. So again, there's some fudge room there. The specs on these springs that I got from Cam Motion, with an installed height of 1 inch, 800 thousandths, 170 pound spring, at 1.115 thousandths, that's considered the safe opening. The 450 pound spring, you can see how these stepped up. My other ones were at 390, so these are slightly stronger. And they coil bind at 1 inch, so using the math on this card, this gives you 800 lift operating range minus your 100,000 safety margin, so you're good for 700 lift, 0.700 thousandths. And with tolerances. I'm 685 to 689, plus I lost a couple thousandths because my shims aren't exact. So in a nutshell, we're good. Now you got to get the springs on the head. I have a beautiful, I think it's a Proform. I bought it a long time ago after I tried to assemble my first set of big block Chevy heads with giant triple springs and nearly killed myself. I bought a sturdy valve spring compressor made for racing valve springs. Don't try it with a regular one. But these aren't as strong as those, so my Proform one, the cup is so big for big springs, and these heads, the area of the rocker cover is really high. It hits right here if you're not careful. I tried to put the first one in, wasn't having a lot of fun. In the past, I'd bought a few LS specific tools in case you had to do it on the car or whatever. And let me show you, but I found one. I was able to adapt it, and it's actually working pretty good. And you can do 2 at a time. So let me set it up. Be right back. A long while ago, I bought 2 different versions of the LS specific valve spring compressor. This rig and this rig. This was a little too scary, especially because the cylinder head's on the bench. Typically, both of these, you would have the cylinder head up because the cylinder head would be on the engine, and that would hold the valves up. In this case, I got both valves sitting on a rag with the weight of the cylinder head on it. That's all you need. The dot head's a little unique, so I had to shim this solid. This had to bolt on solid. You just tighten the nut. It goes down just enough. I had to play with my shims, so it goes down just enough to get the locks on 2 at a time. So 2, 4, 6, 8, you're done. Not bad. I was pretty skeptical at first and thought I was going to have to make an adapter for my tried and true valve spring compressor, but when you use the traditional style, there's a lot of juggling around. I'm used to it. You know, you get it clamped down. It locks in position, freeing up your hands to go ahead and wrestle with the locks, but I usually stand the head up. In this case, with the head laying on the bench, it's actually easy. So the only thing that might snag me up from putting the heads on is I really wanted to CC the combustion chamber just so I could accurately figure my compression ratio. And I had a little, it wasn't a barrette, but it was a little plastic tube with milliliters. Milliliters and CC is the same, just different ways of saying the same thing, I guess. So I just wanted to know so I could calculate my compression ratio, but I'm not going to let it hold me up, and here's why. I have a bargain basement set of pistons I found that have a slight dish. As long as my compression ratio is less than 12 to 1, I'm good. While it'd be nice to know, I'm gonna run these heads, I'm gonna run those pistons. It's going together either way. I don't want to sound, what's the word, aloof about it, or not that I don't care, but this is some pretty nice exotic junk, but it's still a bunch of junk. You know, this is not, it would be, if you built this engine from scratch, you'd spend 40 grand. I'm trying to do it for $4,000 or $5,000, so. And I'm doing pretty good. Maybe 6, we'll see. I'm gonna do the calculation and give you the honest number when I'm done, but it's gonna be a heck of an engine for what it is, and it could be better, and maybe the next one will be, because I did buy the second block, so. But call me Low Buck Chuck. Anyway, have a nice evening, and I'll talk to you in a couple days.